Hi, I'm Shelley Wood and this is my tiny sewing room where I make doll clothes sewing videos. Today I'm going to show you how to make this elastic waist skirt with a ruffle, which should fit 11-inch dolls like this Hair Amazing doll, a regular Mattel Barbie, Mattel's Curvy Barbie, Vintage Francie, and many other fashion dolls. Now you can see a very extensive list of all the dolls that fit in this pattern on my website when you visit my website shelleywood.com, so you can download and print this free PDF sewing pattern. Please use the pattern to cut out the two pieces shown here. Now sometimes if you're new to sewing, you don't know what it means to cut on the fold. So let me show you what that means. Here's the upper piece and you can see these arrows. That means that the fabric was folded there so that we get a much longer piece of fabric when we open it up. We also cut the ruffle on the fold, so once I remove my straight pins, again right where the arrows are, you can see that the fabric has been folded before I cut it. So see these two arrows? We line those up with the fold, and then when you open it up you have a longer piece of fabric than what that half size pattern would show. So that's just a quick explanation. Now we'll also be using some 1/8 inch elastic. I recommend elastic by the yard. There's a link to this elastic company in the description below this video on YouTube. Now let's start by working with the long ruffle piece. Create a hem along one of the longest edges by folding your fabric once and then a second time. Sew along this edge from one end to the other. Now I used a sewing machine to do this hem, but it's okay to use a whip stitch to hem by hand. And again, there's a link to my whip stitch hem tutorial video in the description below. Next, you're going to gather the unhemmed long side of the ruffle. Begin your gathers about 1.5 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch from the ruffle's edge. If you need help gathering, again, I have a tutorial for that. Don't knot your thread at the end of the gathers. Adjust your gathers to fit the long side of the other piece of fabric, that's the main skirt piece. Once you're sure the ruffle will fit along the skirt's edge, then you can knot your gathers. Pin your ruffle to the skirt's edge. The idea behind pinning is to keep the gathers as even as you can from one end to the other. So in this video clip, you'll see that I don't knot my gathers until I've measured it to make sure that the ruffle is going to fit against the main part of the skirt. And once I've measured it, then I can knot my gathers. So that's what I'm doing here. And if you need help tying a knot with a needle and thread, I have a tutorial for that too. Okay, now you see me evening out my gathers, and then I'm going to pin it with a straight pin to the main part of the skirt. Once I've got it all pinned, then I like to use a back stitch to sew the ruffle to the main part of the skirt. And if you need help with the back stitch, again, I have a tutorial for that. So now you can see we'll need to attach the ruffle to the skirt. Pinning it is not enough, you need to sew it on. Again, I'm using a back stitch for this step. And then I remove my straight pins as I do the back stitch as I go along. But you could of course use a sewing machine for this too. And my backstitch tutorial is also found below this video on YouTube. Now once your ruffle is fully attached, flip it over like this, all along the edge, and then from the underside of the skirt, I want you to press it. We're going to press along the stitch line. Make a casing along the side that's opposite of the ruffle by folding the fabric once and then a second time, but the second time you fold it, it's deeper. Now you're going to whip stitch along the bottom edge of the casing. Your pattern is marked for these casing folds, but to no one's surprise, I also have a tutorial for how to do a casing. It may help to steady your stitches if you pin the casing in place before you stitch it. Alright, so here is how I make my casing. I fold a tiny little fold, and then I measure that. Mostly what I'm doing here is measuring it to see if it's the same as my pattern. Then I fold it a little deeper, and again I measure it to see if it's the same as the pattern. Now I begin my whip stitch right along the very bottom edge. It also helps to make sure that the two sides are going to match up as you work at sewing the casing. Okay, next you're going to measure your doll's waist for elastic, allowing for a slight overlap when you cut the elastic. Attach a small safety pin to one end of the elastic and send the elastic through the casing. Use straight pins on either side of the skirt to hold the elastic in place. Now you'll watch me do that right here. I'm sending that little safety pin through, and when I get to the end of the elastic, then I pin it in there, making sure that the pin goes all the way through the elastic and the fabric. Then I do the same thing on this end. I'm going to make sure that that straight pin went all the way through. If I can tug it, I need to readjust if I can get it out of there. So I need to make sure that the straight pin went through the elastic. Do not remove the straight pins just yet. Fold the skirt in half with your right sides facing. That means the pretty side touches the pretty side of the fabric. So here I have my right sides facing. Keep the straight pins in the elastic until you've sewn over the elastic a few times. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch along this unsewn edge from the elastic waist down to the ruffle's edge. Now you can remove your straight pins. Invert the skirt, in other words, flip it right side out, just like you see me doing here. And now you're ready to try this skirt on a doll. Special thanks to my sister-in-law who gave me this hair-mazing fashion doll. Thank you so much. For more free printable PDF sewing patterns to fit dolls of many shapes and all different sizes, please remember to visit my website, shelleywood.com. Hey, did you know that you could design your own doll pants patterns from scratch with just a limited amount of sewing knowledge? Pattern design is made simple by connecting your doll's measurements with a template I give you during my course. I'm Shelley Wood, the doll clothing designer. I own Shelley Wood LLC and the website shelleywood.com. In my Creative Spark online learning course on doll pants design, I'll teach you the basic fundamentals of pattern design, like how do seam allowances work, before we move on to work on designing our own leggings, jeans, fly front pants, and even overalls. So please join me. I would love to see you on the Creative Spark online learning platform. Come see what we offer. Again, I'm Shelley Wood, one of the instructors.